Hi, welcome to 5 Good Questions. I'm your host, Jake Taylor. Our guest today is Dov Baron. Dov has been sharing his wisdom and expertise privately and on international stages with professional leaders for more than 30 years. He was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers. His current podcast, Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, is the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives. In addition to being a speaker, author, and a radio host, Dov is the leading authority on authentic leadership and creating a corporate culture that generates fierce loyalty. Today we're going to be discussing his book, Fiercely Loyal: How High-Performing Companies Develop and Retain Top Talent. Dov is an expert in leadership. Let's ask him 5 good questions. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. My guest today is Dov Baron, author of Fiercely Loyal. Hey, Dov, thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Jake. I'm happy to be here.
Well, based on all your speaking experience, I know this is going to be a good one, and our past conversations. So let's jump right into it.
Absolutely.
So question number 1, why is loyalty the single most important characteristic of any organization?
For the simple reason that when you and I, well, not you because you're much younger than me, but for those of us who are in my age bracket, when we started in the workforce, some counselor or some guidance person said, what do you want to do for a living? That was a 20 to 40 year question. In today's generation, 50% of the workforce are millennials, and millennials, a career is 4 years, not 40. That's 10 times less. So you got to keep those people for as long as you possibly can. Why? Because millennials leave their job every 1.2 to 2 years. Your return on investment, your ROI on training and development of them is 1.5 to 2 times their annual salary. What does that mean? It means if they leave you within 2 years, you lost.
Right.
So you've got to keep them, and it's difficult to keep them. They are moving quick.
And with something like a person who's, if they're growing and adding to their skills and they're an appreciating asset in a lot of ways, that you're missing out on all of that upside if they're changing, if they're turning over like that.
Yeah, and aside from all you've invested in them, anything else that they're bringing in is gone too. So we got to keep these people with us. And the best example I've got is actually my own, and one of the guys that I employed who was a millennial, and I kept him for 6 years.
Is that the record?
Right? No, actually, some of my clients now kept some of their millennials for 6 and 7 years. But there's a strategy to doing that, and that is to give them a new career every 2 to 3 years. Not a new job, a new career inside the business. And they're like, okay, I'm on.
So making kind of intrapreneurs out of the millennials has been a pretty effective strategy.
Well, it's more than entrepreneurs, although that is a very big part of my book, Fiercely Loyal, and explaining that millennials are more entrepreneurial minded, and if you're going to keep them, it's a very good idea to set up a garage inside of your organization where they can tinker and develop their own strategies and their own things. So an entrepreneurial environment, absolutely, that is vital. But it's more than that. That's just one piece of it.
Right. So question number 2, it's very easy to imagine finding meaning if you work at the Red Cross or Patagonia maybe, or Whole Foods, some of these bigger mission driven that everyone knows about. But let's say that you're running a more regular business that probably applies to more of the majority of us. How do you find that all-important meaning in the work for you, both you and your employees, especially given that millennials, it's one of the most important things to them when they're surveyed is that they're doing work that matters? You
got it. And that's a great question because it is a burning desire inside of millennials. So, I speak a lot, as we were just talking about before we went on air. I just was speaking in Iran, and I was speaking in Montreal. No difference. Because what I'm speaking about is purpose-driven organizations, purpose-driven leaders in purpose-driven organizations, and that is what you must be. I mean, just stop for a minute as you watch this, as you're listening, and ask yourself this question. What is it costing you? What is it costing your organization to not have your people being purpose-driven? What is it costing you in lack of engagement? They're wandering off early, coming in late, not fully present. What's that costing you in? They're not present in the training, not just in the work, but in the training that they're doing. all those costs add up enormously versus somebody who is engaged deeply. You know, we know that engagement is an ultimate high. It's more than 70% of people are disengaged. What engages them? Purpose. So here's the thing. You ask the question, well, how do you, if you're not at the Red Cross and you've got another thing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you make widgets. It doesn't matter whether you're a coffee shop. Whatever it is you are, you've got to ask first as the leader. Now, maybe you're a leader of a team, maybe you're a CEO, maybe you're a president, maybe you're an owner, entrepreneur, solopreneur, whatever it is. You've got to ask, what is the purpose of my business? Now, before you can answer that, you've got to step back. What's my purpose? What is my purpose? And this is a question that invariably people don't take the time to answer.
That's a scary question. I mean, for a lot of people. It is.
So one of the surveys I do when I'm speaking live, I say, put your hand up if you think it's important to you and potentially to your business and maybe even profit for you to be purpose driven. Put your hand up. Without doubt, 80% minimum, often 100%.
The rest in
Iran, speaking in Tehran, it was 90% of the audience put their hand up. Yes, it's important, right? I spoke in Montreal this week. 90% of the audience put their hand up. Same, okay? Then I asked the question, how many of you can honestly say, we do an exercise, but get them to see it. How many of you can honestly say that you truly know your life purpose? Guess how many hands go up? Fractional.
I don't know, yeah.
Fractional. If we get 20% of the room, it's a big hit. Most people don't know. So why is it that we all know it's really important to have purpose, but we haven't done it? Because most of us don't know how to exude it. We don't know how to elicit that from within ourselves. And so one of the clues I will give you, there's more to it, but I want to give it to the people watching, is to understand this. Your business unconsciously, your business was started for a couple of reasons. I'll explain them. The first one was to make your life better. You simply wanted to make your life better, and the people you love, you want to make their life better. So you started a business, and you went, okay, I got to do something. Second reason was to express something. There's something within you, a desire to be creative or a desire to serve in some way. And so there's a desire to express and a desire to make your life better. But what you don't know is unconsciously, your business is designed to be the vehicle for your purpose. You've already done that. You just don't know it yet. My job is to elicit that and bring that forward. So one of the questions that we dig in as part of our strategy is to ask you this. And I'm going to ask you right now, and I want you to write it down. What pisses you off? What has always pissed you off? What is the thing that is like, that you wish you could wave the magic wand and cure the world of? Because in some way, shape, or form, you unconsciously, and the key, unconsciously, went into business to see if you could make a dent in that. If not to eradicate it, to make a dent. And so if you can look at that, bring yourself back to those questions. So I went into business to make my life better. Okay, I can see that. And make some money in doing that. Okay, and there was some part of me that I wanted to express. What was that? Oh, I can see that now. And then the third question, as I said, there's more to it, but here's where we start, is what is it that pisses me off in the world? What is it I wish I could wave the magic wand and eradicate? Because unconsciously, maybe I started in business to make a dent in that. Then I go, So I've got a guy right now, he's in the nutritional business. I'm working with very successful, high-level entrepreneur. He's in the nutritional business, big in that business. And we dug into this, and I said, what pisses you off? And he said, well, what do you mean? And we went into it. I said, it's bugged you for a long time. And he said, it's always bugged me, but it really got in my face recently. And I said, what was that? And this was just after Christmas. And he said, he lives in the La Jolla area. And he said, I was out, it was Christmas Day, and I'm walking around. He goes, I don't have family here, and I'm walking around. And he said, and I see all these homeless vets. And he goes, I realized how much homelessness has bothered me my entire life, but it really bothers me with vets. And then we just flipped it and said, how is your business a vehicle for healing that? And immediately he had his purpose. Immediately went, okay, I know where I need to steer my business. I know I can make a difference in this, and this will grow my business. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had probably a lot of energy around solving that
like
problem.
went from being I mean, we're having that particular conversation. I've worked with him for a lot of years, but we're having that conversation because he's feeling a bit defeated and feeling like, it's Christmas Day, but I don't really feel like I'm on track with stuff. And, I've got a lot of success, but something's missing. We finished that call. The guy is on fire. He's done at least half a dozen videos where he's talked about that conversation and said that this transformed his business.
Yeah, you probably don't really need to check in with him for a year. He's got a whole plate full of stuff to work on.
It's on fire.
Yeah. So question number 3, what's a chief relationship officer?
Yeah, good question. So as you know, that is mentioned right in here in my book, Fiercely Loyal, Chief Relationship Officer. And what I say is that whether you are the CEO, whether you're the CIO, CMO, CFO, any of those C-suite individuals, or whether you are the janitor, you need to add to your card CRO, which stands for Chief Relationship Officer. More than ever, we live in the world of social media. What's the first word in that? Social. How do you be social? You have to be relational. And so if you want to grow your business, you want to be a great leader, the number one thing for you to do is to become relational. Now, relational is not the usual bullshit of finding out the surface stuff and, hey, Bob, how's the wife? How's the kids? And you don't really care. But it's relational as in you take it to the next level. You find out things that are a little more personal. However, this is not one-sided. It has to have reciprocity. So you have to reveal first. So you tell them something about yourself that would not be part of a normal, quote, business conversation. I know things about my clients. I know things about the people I do business with that they don't normally have those conversations with. But as a result, there's a greater bond between us and there's a greater relationship. So understand that whatever business you think you're in, so, people watching are thinking they're in manufacturing, they think they're in tech services or whatever it is. The bottom line is you're in one business before anything else. You're in the relationship business. So you need to be a CRO, a Chief Relationship Officer. And if you're not good at it, learn how to get better at it.
That's a really great segue for question number 4, which has to do with vulnerability, which is a very hot topic these days. Brene Brown has a really couple great TED Talks on it. Everyone agrees that it's this really important thing. Yet, what are some of the tactics that you've uncovered that allow someone to be vulnerable, especially if it's not something that you're kind of predisposed towards? If you're a little bit more, I don't want to say introverted, but just more guarded with letting yourself out of the bag a little bit.
Well, let's sort of step back from that a little bit, Jake, and just ask this question: who hasn't been hurt?
That's true.
Right? We've all been hurt. We've all been betrayed. But but is that going to stop you falling in love? Is that going to stop you from having relationships? Well, of course not.
Right.
So how do you have a relationship? You reveal yourself. You can't have a relationship with anybody while you're not revealed. So the bottom line is we all have our prickliness. We all have our scaredness. We all have our, I don't know if I can do this. But the truth of the matter is everybody got wounded. You still have to step forward. Now, when I talk about vulnerability, and I speak a lot about vulnerability, and I love Brene Brown stuff, but I think that a lot of people don't get it. And because they don't get it, they go, I can't do that. It's just not who I am.
Right.
Of course you can do it. You do it every day. And I'm going to give you the example that's in my book. It's called the Hawk Effect. When I lived in Australia before I moved to North America. When I lived in Australia during that time in the 80s, a general election was held, and the Prime Minister at the time was Bob Hawke. Bob Hawke was an Aussie man's man, beer-drinking, tough guy, been the head of the labor unions and had risen to power in politics. He never showed anybody, and he used to say he can outfight and outdrink anybody. That's the kind of guy he was. He was a real Aussie guy.
To run on. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just a tough Aussie bloke. And he'd been Prime Minister and done a pretty poor job. Much to everybody's surprise, done a pretty poor job. The general election was coming up. The leader of the opposition was Andrew Peacock. On a particular date, 60 Minutes or one of those kinds of shows did an expose on Bob Hawke and showed that he had failed miserably as a prime minister at this and this and this, dropped the ball in all kinds of ways. And the reason was that he had a couple of daughters who were drug addicts. One who was literally going from crack house to crack house, although I don't think they were called that in those days.
Yeah.
And as a result, their grandchild was being brought up by Bob Hawke and his wife. That all got exposed. The following night, Andrew Peacock, the leader of the opposition, came on TV and said, obviously this guy can't even manage his own family, let alone the country. He's let us down. You know how to vote. By law in Australia at that time, if you gave one political party time, you had to give the other party equal time. Not quite like the Americans, but maybe a little more fair. So equal time. And so the next night, Bob Hawke was on there and he said, I love Australia. Everybody who knows me knows that about me. And I have let you down. I've let this country down and dropped the ball in all kinds of ways. And it is true about my kids being drug addicts. I would spend evenings running from crack house to crack house in Sydney to try and find my daughter. Both my daughters have been in rehab. One is out now, living with us. She's doing good. It's true we were bringing up our grandchild. I love Australia, but I'll be honest. I love my family even more. We've gone through a very tough time, but everybody's on track now. I ask for your forgiveness. I don't expect you to vote for me, but I want to be a better prime minister. He won by a landslide because as he said all that, a tear fell out of his eye. A man who never showed any feelings. 2 or 3 weeks later, they went out on the streets and interviewed people and said, why did you vote him back in? He won by a landslide. Why did you vote him back in? He became, up until very recently, up until Howard, Australia's longest serving prime minister. And they said, because he was one of us. He was human. We all have families. We all have family struggles. We can understand. That vulnerability was so powerful. It shifted everything. Vulnerability is incredibly powerful for building loyalty. But please understand, it is not emotional vomit. Yeah. That is not vulnerability. And that's what people don't understand when they go, I just can't do it. It's not emotional vomit. It is discerning vulnerability with reciprocity. Understanding that your vulnerability is not mine. So what might be incredibly courageous for you might seem like nothing to me. But I have to measure by looking at you and paying attention to you and being present with you. Are you uncomfortable sharing this with me? Even though for me, I'm going, it seems so small, because something that may seem very big for me is very small for you and vice versa. So you got to have compassion. You got to have reciprocity. You got to have discernment in your vulnerability. But it bonds people phenomenally to you. And as a leader, it is one of the greatest tools in your toolbox. But do not, under any circumstance, bullshit your vulnerability. Because here's what you need to know. Millennials have a bullshit meter the size of a football field, and they will read it from you, and they will totally dismiss you so fast. You can get away with bullshitting your vulnerability with baby boomers. You'll never get away with it with millennials.
Any hypothesis why this new better radar on younger people compared to?
Absolutely. Because as Gary Vaynerchuk said, we've all had the voyeur button switched on inside of us. We've seen enough of it that we know that reality TV isn't real, but we know when it was. We know what's real and what's not. We're all getting educated in vulnerability via social media, and we might not like it. We might not care about a lot of it, but it's trained us to be able to go bullshit, good, real, kind of bullshit. and the thing is that I, in my generation, if I'm not me personally, but my generation, I've learned it through social media, but millennials have grown up with it.
Yeah.
They have not known anything else. And Generation Z will be even more so.
Yeah, just more reps of having to discern who was real and who wasn't.
Absolutely.
So question number 5, what are the 4 C's? I found that to be a really interesting framework.
Yeah, the 4 C's are interesting because if you want to keep a millennial loyal, you have to have the 4 C's as part of your culture. So starts with cooperation. So in a lot of corporations, there is silos, the marketing department, the accounting department, the whatever it is, the sales department, and they're siloed and they don't cooperate. In fact, they keep each other very separated and all the rest of it. The companies that are really succeeding, as I said, this is fiercely loyal, is how high-performing companies are managing to keep and develop their top talent, is because they're taking down those silos and they're learning to cooperate. Cooperation goes bigger because it means cooperating with outside of your company, and it also means cooperating outside of your status. So I only work with C-suite individuals. No, I'm going to cooperate with the janitor if he can help. And which leads us into the second one, which is collaboration. So collaboration between departments, collaboration between expertise, collaboration between people of a different level. How can I collaborate? So the great bosses are collaborating with people. I was speaking with somebody who started the first new bank it was on stage with me, sharing the stage with me in Iran, started the first new bank in the UK in 150 years. And part of how they did that was, as the owners of the organization, as the presidents and the founders, they collaborated with customers and frontline workers, the tellers. Mm-hmm. They sat with the tellers and said, tell us what people complain about. Collaborate with us. Train us in what it's like. So that collaboration is vital. So cooperation and collaboration, vitally important. Then the next two are contribution and community. So contribution is that we, our company, have to be about something bigger than our company, than profit. We have to be about purpose for sure, but we have to be about contributing something to our community. So our community might be the industry that we're in. Our community might be the city of wherever you live. It might be contributing to the country of. It may be a global contribution because we're a green company or we're a B company. So we're making for betterment. So it is cooperation, collaboration, contribution, and community. If you've got those 4 C's in your culture, then people will want to work there. They want to be bonded to that. Because as you said right at the beginning, Jake, and it's vitally important for everybody to get, the number one thing on a millennials list of wanting to work for you is meaningful work. And if you've got the 4 C's, you've got the basis of meaningful work. If you've stake that in the ground with purpose, you create enormous amounts of loyalty.
Yeah, I think people and managers and owners are ignoring that at their own risk, for sure.
Well, and they do. And this is the thing. And I hear them say, well, it doesn't really matter, blah, blah, blah. And I say, you're right. It doesn't matter if you don't want to stay in business.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to avoid that.
Your workforce is already millennials. And if you don't think you serve millennials, you're going to. Because, they didn't stop at a certain age. They're already 37 years old.
Right. Yeah.
So, they're 37 years old. They're not going away. They're 17 to 37 years old. They are already leaders.
So bonus question that we always ask for everybody, and that is for a book recommendation. This is typically something either that is off the beaten path or that you have given away the most, because that's kind of the proof in the pudding of whether you really believe in it or not. So what do you have for us today?
Great question. And I'm going to give you 2, because these are the 2 books that are my way of putting it. I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but they are my Bibles. They're 2 books that I read at least a couple of times a year. One of them, I read passages from both of them constantly, and I give both of them away. And neither of them are business books.
That's usually a good thing.
Excuse me. One is by Richard Bach. It's called Illusions. And is it Confessions of? It's not Confessions of. It's something like that. Of a Reluctant Messiah. It's a novella. It's a fictional piece, and it's a wonderful life teaching book about how to understand that you're much greater than who you are or who you perceive you are. And the other book is certainly my all-time favorite book, and that is Khalil Gibran, The Prophet. Mm-hmm. Khalil Gibran, The Prophet is such a simple book, easy to read, written in the form of poetry, that really, for me, if you follow that book and the examples when it says, teach us about work, teaches about love, teaches about marriage, teaches about friendship. If you lived your life with only one book to be guided by, I believe you could live by that book and be Christian. You could live by that book and be a Muslim. You could live that book and be a Jew. You could be a Hindu. Any book, it would never interfere with your faith, but I believe it would strengthen your faith. So it's a wonderful book, and I literally have given away hundreds of copies of both.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think I just remember the first time I read that, and it was like, wow, there's just so much knowledge distilled down into very bite-sized and very easy to remember takeaways. You don't have to work really hard for it.
No, and there's a lot more stuff by Khalil Gibran, and the fact that he was a fabulous artist, his art is out there as well. Most people don't know about it. But if you're just going to pick up one book, pick up The Prophet by Khalil Gibran and just read one poem, one subject a day for until you've done the book. Then start again and see if the first poem means the same now you've read the end. But don't read more than one at a time. Read one, take a break, write in your journal, come back to it the next day, read the next one. And I promise you, it'll shift you dramatically.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Dov, really appreciate you coming on the show. And I was not disappointed. My expectations were high and you delivered.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored. It was a pleasure to be here. I'm really glad you invited me, Jake. Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me, may I tell them how to get a hold of me?
Yeah, sure. It'll be in the show notes too, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure. If you want to find out about me, my main page is fullmontyleadership.com. There you can find out about my books, my blog, all the things. We have a podcast. We're the #1 podcast for Fortune 500. You can find me on iTunes. Dov Baron, Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. YouTube, of course. Twitter, @the_Dov Baron. LinkedIn, all those kinds of places. But if you want to just reach out to me, one of the things I say to people all the time, and whenever I'm interviewed, I do at least 3 interviews a week. Don't listen to this. It's a waste of time.
We should have put that at the beginning.
Apply it. Do something with it. And then write to me, Dov@dovbaron.com. That's my personal email. Giving you my personal email. Write to Dov@dovbaron.com and tell me what you got out of this show and what you're going to do with it. And then do exactly the same to Jake. In fact, CC us. CC the two of us and tell us, because here's Jake, he brings these people to you, he brings these great books to you, he puts all that in front of you, gives you a way to see inside of a book so that you can actually have some insight before you've even bought it. You get to censor the author, he gives you all this great info, and then you watch it, and you go to the next one. Come on. This is not mind fodder. This is stuff that will really feed your heart, your soul, your business. Take it, apply it, put it in action. And so tell us what you got out of this show. Tell us what you're going to do with it. CC us both. I look forward to hearing from you. I read all of those emails, I promise you.
Wow, Dov, that's a great offer. I think maybe I need to have that as my homepage video instead of the crap that I have on there now. It's more inspiring.
Well, you can copy it word for word. You have my full permission.
Well,
or you can just cut me out and put that in.
Yeah, I'll just put my face over it.
Sure, little plastic sticker.
Well, Dov, it's a real pleasure having you on, and again, thank you.
Thank you, Jake. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this interview. If you'd like to support this author and purchase their book, click here. If you'd like to become a subscriber to 5GQ, click here. And I included a couple other interviews that you might appreciate right here. Thanks. Happy reading.